Welcome to the Landlord Diaries, where we talk about midterm rentals and the opportunities behind them. We'll share landlord stories, talk about maximizing investment potential, and discuss how to live the very best landlord life. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Furnished Finder, the leader and largest online marketplace for midterm rentals. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.
It's your fabulous host team of the Landlord Diaries, Kelly Bailey and Katie Lyon, coming to you from the Furnished Finder marketing team and midterm rental hosts ourselves. One thing that you guys have been asking for that we're excited about is, what type of hosts you want to hear from. So today is one of those hosts that just has a few listings and has started recently in the midterm rental space. So Katie, what did you really learn from Jesus today?
Yeah, Jesus is really a very interesting guy. He's exploring transitioning his long-term rentals into midterm, short-term hybrid. So he is really becoming like the expert of all of the different strategies of renting out a property, but he's found this sweet spot within midterms, and then he'll seasonally switch them over to short terms when it's really beneficial for his market. But he's really enjoying these midterms, and now he's going to be transitioning more of his long terms into the midterm space. So it's really interesting to hear about how he tested it out, what kinds of things he thought about before, his accountant wife and everything she wanted to know, and how he really arbitraged from himself and his wife to test out this whole midterm investment strategy. So this is a really great one. He's very intuitive, but I feel like also knows the right things to look at when you're testing out a new strategy or trying something new.
Getting started in the short-term, midterm space can be intimidating, but doesn't need to be. With long-term rental investments and limited time to learn the furnished rental business, Jesus Jimenez took a couple unique approaches to get started. He began his journey with a co-host and arbitraged a long-term rental from his wife. What a fun story. I'm excited to jump in. How are you today, Jesus?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you. How are you?
Doing well. Well, we met through a connection with our president and CEO, Jeff Hurst. I said, how'd y'all meet? He said, I was very impressed by an email that he sent out. And that the CEO would actually respond, and you love our Furnished Finder customer service team as well. So, what would you like to share about that interaction?
Yeah, it was a great conversation. At first when I saw the email, and I believe the email was sent to all landlords on Furnished Finder, that Jeff was just looking for feedback. How's the platform from different landlords, and I thought it was unique. I was like, this is something I haven't seen before, and I've used multiple platforms. So I sent an email, took him up on the offer. We had a great conversation. Shared some of the things that I love about the platform. Key check, the customer service. I'm always going to say I will rave about it. I'll call, I'll submit a case, and get quick responses. And what I found is that the customer service team, they really try to help you. They really try to go above and beyond to find a solution or give you the answer, and hope for the best outcome. So I do appreciate that. And I enjoy the platform. I've used it for about a year and a half now. And I really enjoy the platform. So I took them up on the offer.
Awesome. Well, if you want to hear more from our CEO and president, Jeff Hurst, don't forget to circle back and catch episode 100 and 109 of the Landlord Diaries podcast. So I think your first challenge in the midterm rental industry was overcoming your wife's hesitation. Let's hear the
Yes.
story and how it played out.
So we have a townhouse, which has always been long term. And we did some major renovations. I was in between, do we just do another long-term rental? I was hearing about this midterm space, travel nurses, and I wanted to sort of just try something different. I did some numbers, listened to some YouTube videos. Everything sounded great. I think the location of where the townhouse is It's near some hospital, so everything was sort of checking out. And yeah, I read the numbers by my wife, and she was just on the fence, you know.
And what is your wife's profession? Because she's not just your average investor either.
That is the thing. So my wife is an accountant. So everything had to be pretty much perfect. I would show her certain things, and I mean, it would take her 30 seconds to look at a spreadsheet and say, yeah, there's something not right here. This doesn't look right. This number is off. Like, it was just quick, pretty brutal.
Yeah, so you said your numbers really had to be buttoned up, and
Yes.
eventually you came to a solution. So, how did you get through all that?
Correct. So it was good. I'm glad that my wife helped me as far as making sure the numbers were correct. And then the more I went back to the drawing board, the more I dug in, the more I felt, you know what, this sounds like a really good strategy. This sounds like something that I want to try. At the end of the day, my wife still didn't feel comfortable. So the approach was, okay, let me arbitrage from my wife and myself, and that was basically the solution that we came with. I basically paid the regular long term rent uh, to us, and then I was able to try this midterm strategy and see how it worked. And the idea was, hey, let's try this for 1 year and see what happens.
And when I think about that, I think, okay, you're dipping into the same funds. Like a lot of married couples, while maybe you have your different investments, a lot of times it comes from the same source and the same shared income. But y'all do things a little differently, which is why it worked out for you. So how do y'all do your finances that open this door for you?
Correct. So some of the finances are together, but then we also have our own separate accounts. And basically, it was 100% my risk. The money that I used for furnishing, I was responsible for rent, utility. I was responsible for everything, right? So if things didn't work out, it was going to come out of my savings, and she was okay with it.
I think that's so great because a couple things you said here that I want to just highlight. First, that you ran the numbers and then ran them and ran them and ran them and looked for holes in your numbers. I think sometimes as investors or landlords, we might run the numbers. And guys, when you're quote unquote running the numbers for a midterm rental, it doesn't have to be insanely complicated. It can be very simple. You can do it in an Excel sheet. Heck, you can do it in the notes app of your phone, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be super complicated because all these numbers are a lot more basic when you're coming to midterm rentals. You're not going to change the price of your property every night or every week,
correct.
right? You might adjust it seasonally, but just everything gets a lot simpler. Um, but I love that your wife was able to help you look for holes in that, right? And to say, okay, hey, and I'm making some assumptions here. Tell me if I'm right, but like, do you have enough reserves set aside? Are you calculating enough for furnishings? Are your
Correct.
utility bills high enough? What about if something breaks? Like all of these what ifs. Sometimes I see people who are like, "Oh, I have this property, I think I could charge X amount and then I'd be cash flowing and be great." And it's like, well, what if something breaks? What if you do have a little bit of vacancy? Because their vacancies are much smaller with midterm rentals because you have these longer stays, right? But you still have to calculate for them. You still have to calculate for if it takes you some time to get off of the ground. Um, so if you have really solid numbers, even after being conservative with all of those estimates, you're in a really good place because midterms are they're so much more steady. They're so much more predictable than something super volatile like a short term rental.
Hi, Katie. So you're absolutely right. I think for me, the two biggest concerns, utilities for sure, and the vacancy. The utilities, because it's a big unit. It's only a two-bedroom, but it's around 1,200 square feet, and it's something that I don't control, and that was my biggest concern. I've seen stories where people would leave the AC on and just do different things because technically they're not paying for it. So I was concerned about how do I control that, and as well with the vacancy, right? Just how do we, if we have a few months where we don't get it rented, then how am I going to cover the cost? So those were definitely some of the biggest areas of concerns.
And you have some really solid numbers as far as like your Furnished Finder listing. you rent your listing for 4,100. It's a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath. Your all-in furnishing cost was around 10,000, and you paid off your rent to your wife in the first 9 months, and everything else has been profit. So as far as analyzing the numbers, year one looked good. Now you're jumping into year two. What do you want to say about the midterm rental strategy and how it compares to long-term rentals? Just for those that maybe haven't made the jump yet.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing, it's about a 2x difference. So I think there's definitely room to maximize comparing long term to midterm. Year two, it's a little bit different. Year one, we had 100% travel nurses, 3 months, 6 month contracts. Year two, it's a little bit different. We started off with travel nursing, and now we're getting a different mix of people that are just coming into the area to work 1 month, 3 months, etc. So that's sort of what year two is looking like for us.
And your very first booking, you did one of those things that Katie and I love, where you started marketing it with the unfurnished photos and happen to get someone to say yes and set up a contract for your first tenant before you ever even furnish the place, which I personally love to do. And we've had many Landlord Diaries stories confirming that, yes, it's a real thing. And it's not like we're trying to, catch anyone off guard. We're trying to market our property to the best of our ability and communicate well along the way. So you don't have to wait for it to be furnished to start advertising your property, as long as you stick to your deadline and communicate well what that furnishing is going to look like. So, what was the experience like for you going through that for your first midterm rental?
Yeah. So the strategy was the same. So I decided to do this to build up the confidence level of switching over. So I wanted to see, okay, what does my market look like? Is there going to be any interest? Is the price too high? So that was really the main reason. And when I first did it, I did the virtual staging, and that didn't go over well for me. I did have the interest, but then when I spoke to the people about, hey, it's still vacant, and we're working on this, they got turned off, right? And it's fair. I think anyone would. So then I tried a different approach. I said, okay, let me post the pictures, just showing the vacant unit, and I did that for each room. And then I also did like a lookbook, and it showed, hey, this is what we're going to furnish it with, right? Just to give people a good visual of, hey, the living room looks like this, and these are the furnishings. And we did that throughout both bedrooms, and in every room we did that, so that they knew right from the beginning. And we added the details in the description. This unit will be ready by X date. Here's the lookbook, here's the furnishings. And when we spoke to them on the phone, we reiterated the same, just to make sure that they understood what we were doing, they understood the vision, and that there was no foul play.
Guys, you could even upload a couple of those pictures of your lookbook into your photos and put in the caption that, furnishing coming soon. Here's a sampling of our furnishings or our
Yeah.
inspiration. Or I always like to, when I do this, I'll point them, once I get the inquiry, I'll say, hey, we're working on finishing the furnishings for this apartment. Here's a couple of other ones we have. And I know not everybody has the chance to do that, especially if it's your first one. But anything you can show them just to get that credibility. But I love that it gives you a deadline, right? I think a goal without a deadline is just a wish. So it's like, if you have some sort of goal, whether that's to get your first unit, your next unit, whatever it is, sign up, put that the furnishings are coming soon, and put an availability date. And that gives you, some accountability and makes it so that you are going to be ready to start your midterm rental journey at a specific point, and it's not just going to be a date that's floating in the clouds somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah. So, Jesus, your portfolio, you own two triplexes that are mainly used for long-term rentals, with the exception of a one-bedroom or studio that you do use for the short-term, midterm rental combo. And I'd love for you to explain how the seasons work for short-term and midterm, because some of us combine, right? Like we do mainly midterm and fill the gaps with short-term, or we combine them and see which strategy wins out. Well, Jesus has a really great strategy where it's like a faucet. He turns on short term rentals in a certain season and turns on midterm rentals in a different season. And then you also have your two-bedroom townhouse that is midterm rental only,
Correct.
which worked out well because of HOA restrictions, because
Correct.
most of our midterm rentals don't have the restrictions that short term rentals have. So tell us about those seasons and how you're using the hybrid strategy for that one property that you short term and midterm.
Yeah, so the Airbnb, we're seeing about 3x compared to long term. So for us here in the Boston market, it's May through October, plus or minus. So that's when we do STRs. But then once the winter comes, the amount of travelers that are coming in for short term stays reduces drastically. So there we switch over to the midterm. So I would say November through March, April is when we do primarily midterm rentals. So it's easy for us to control the calendars that way. If we're trying to do midterm and STRs in between, it just seems a little bit more complex. So for us here in this region, it works out, and it's easy to manage.
And in the midterm rental season, what percentage of your bookings would you say come from Furnished Finder?
About 60% from Furnished Finder and about 40% from Airbnb.
I think that's fantastic. You guys put your property everywhere, right? We are not ever going to say list your property on Furnished Finder and nowhere else. Oh, we have a guest.
Nice.
Um, list your property everywhere you can. List it on Airbnb, list it on Furnished Finder, get it out there. And I think the way that you're doing the hybrid model with kind of the turning on and off different strategies is really the ideal way to do it if you want to do short-term rentals. If you wait for just your calendar availability to have, yeah, 3 months or 4 months of availability and snag a midterm rental in between short-term guests without having that strategy, it's not very likely to happen. Like you have to have some intention behind that calendar management. And we've talked about that on a lot of episodes. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in the hybrid method to dig into some of those, but that I think is one of the very ideal ways to pull that off.
And if you listen to the show, then we create playlists for everything. So if this STR MTR hybrid strategy is something you want to hear more about, go to YouTube, click on the playlists on the Landlord Diaries channel, and you will find the STR MTR hybrid strategy. Um, so you're mainly housing travel nurses in your midterm rentals. And as far as the profit goes, you're seeing about 2 times the profit for a midterm rental based off long-term rental rates, and during short-term season you're seeing about 3 times the profit. So have you learned any tips about hosting travel nurses, what they need? And reminder, while travel nurses are a fantastic source of tenants, it is not by any means the only source of tenants in Furnish Finder. So we have over 300,000 listings nationwide, and travel nurses are around 30% of that traffic. So there is a wide variety of reasons someone uses a midterm rental. So tell us, is there anything, since you mainly house travel nurses, is there anything that you do specifically for that type of tenant?
Yeah, I think for my units, it's really the location. So both units are relatively close to. It's called the Longwood Medical Area. So in Boston, we have one area where there's about 3 or 4 major hospitals. So they're about 15-20 minutes away from that area. So that's one of the unique things about our unit. Um, the the townhouse. There's free transportation to that area and back. Not something that we did specifically, but it's just there's certain buses that go to that area that they're just free. So that's something that I highlight in our listings as well, just to make it easy and convenient for people to get there and back. Some people that decide to walk. Right, if the weather is great, they can walk, but it's very easy to get there via transportation.
Yeah, and you do that well in your description, and I made note of that for later in the conversation. So we'll jump into that now. Being in Boston with a strong walk score, public transportation, how often are people coming without a vehicle for your properties? And do you have a parking spot that's included with your rental, or is that an extra charge? So, what have
Yeah.
you found as a balance there?
I normally find people are coming in with their vehicle. I find this
Okay,
in both of the units. They are coming in with their vehicles. For the townhouse, we have a dedicated parking garage, so it's very convenient, especially during the winter time. It's attached, so you just hit a button, you go in and walk right upstairs. And then for my other unit, it's just street parking, and we have a close parking lot right next by, or right nearby. Um, that's I think that's more for them to get around when they're commuting to work, to the hospitals. For the most part, they're going to take public transportation. The parking is very expensive in those areas, so if you're going in 5 days a week or 4 days a week, it can be pretty expensive.
yeah, I never thought about it that way. That's very interesting. The idea of I was thinking of, do they need a vehicle or do they not? But you're right. Like to travel in a large city, parking can be very inconvenient. And so being close to public transportation, that's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing in the townhouse, it's a two-bedroom, and we will find that both guests, both travel nurses, will bring a vehicle, right? So
Okay.
the vehicle is definitely a big thing. That's one of the questions that we get asked the most. Okay, you have a garage, but what about for a second vehicle? And we have plenty of free street parking.
Nice.
But
Awesome. Uh, well, we had also mentioned in the very beginning that you do things a little unique where you didn't. A lot of us jump in and self manage, get used to it first, and then we hire a co-host to figure out. Hey, we already know how to do this. Now we can train someone to do it. And you took the opposite approach. You said, "Hey, I don't have time to figure out the ins and out of all the operations. I'm going to start with a co-host." And I think that was for both short term and midterm. So, how is that going? How did you hire a co-host and what's the process been like working with the co-host?
yeah, so it started when I wanted to get into the STR space. I had a lot of people around me talking to me about Airbnb, how it's great, had 3x. It sounded unbelievable, but I mean, I had a lot of people. So it gets to a point where you're like, okay, I got to try this thing. But time, right? I have a full time job. There's a lot of different things that I manage, family, real estate agent, investor. So there's a lot of things going on. I wanted to try it, but I knew that I didn't have a lot of time and I didn't want to make mistakes as a first time host. So I thought, let me see if I can find someone that I can work with that we're compatible. Let me see what the commissions are. Let me look at, let me see if everything fits. And this may be an easier way for me to at least try it. And then once I'm in the space, then I can figure out what makes the most sense from there. And it worked out great. I started my STR. I reached out to a few folks on Airbnb. I did a search for my market. I looked for Superhost, and I reached out to them and said, "Hey, I'm not looking to rent your unit, but I'm a landlord. I'm in your area, and I'm looking for someone to co-host my unit. Are you interested?" And I sent out, probably about 10 or 12 of these messages. Got a few responses. Some people kindly declined, which was fine. Got a few responses of people that were interested. Met, showed them the space, and just really saw who I connected with, and took it from there.
Yeah, and if that's another playlist we have a co-host playlist. So if you're like, you know what, I like this idea of passive more than self-managing, then get on our playlist on YouTube and listen to the co-host playlist, and you might choose someone that you want to work with all throughout the nation, because many co-hosts are virtual. That just like as That's the really cool thing about midterm rentals. And Sarah Weaver, Bigger Pockets author of 30-Day Stay, Ziana McIntyre, one of the big things that they emphasize is it's midterm rentals can be freedom in life. It's still work, it still takes time, you still need to build your systems, but Sarah travels all over the world and manages with her team midterm rentals from anywhere in the world. So that's the really cool thing about midterm rentals is it's easy to self-manage, but you don't have to. The numbers also work out to have a co-host or a property manager as well at times. So back to that, do your research. The data is not difficult, but it's good to at least have a basis. Furnishedfinder.com/stats is a great spot to start. So Jesus, after expenses, including your co-host, I think you still profit 700 to 1,000 per month on your midterm rentals. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
Awesome. That's great. Anything else you want to add? Yes. So the operation side, the co-host does most of the day-to-day operations with the guests,
Correct.
but as the business owner and property owner, I'm sure you're still heavily involved in, what's being communicated, how it's being communicated. So what does that partnership look like with you guys? What does the co-host do?
Yeah.
What do you do? And, how are the Furnished Finder tools and key check tools helping with that?
Yeah, so I think everything just kind of came into play as we were both new to the MTR space, right? So the co-host that I used for STR showed her the unit, talked to her about the idea. Obviously, she had heard about travel nurses. She knew and was like, okay, let's give this thing a try. So since we were both new into the space, it gave us a good chance to collaborate, to look at, okay, what's the best way of designing, what's the best way of pricing. And at the very beginning, it was a very hands approach where we just came together to try to get this thing done. And then as we continued, then we looked for ways, how do we streamline the process? Okay, where can we need to make some adjustments here, some efficiencies there? What I found was that it was easier for me to manage the Furnished Finder platform, reach out to the tenant, reach out to the leads, whether it's a direct message, whether they're just a prospect. So going through the tenant leads and sending the communication, I took over that piece. It was a lot easier once I could qualify a guest, and it seemed like, okay, this is a hot lead. This is someone that's very interested. Then I would transition that person to the co-host, and then she would take it from there. Get on the phone with her, have a conversation. Okay, just kind of reconfirm everything that we had communicated via text or via email, and get a better idea for what they're looking for, how long is their stay, answer any questions, the neighborhood, transportation, right? Obviously, every person coming in has certain things that they want to verify and just make sure that it is the right place for them. So that's what the co-host does. I think the other thing that we did was we started to standardize our messaging. At times, we would receive interest from multiple guests, and we had to decide, okay, how do we flush this out, or how do we keep these leads active without losing all of them? So we started to add our process, and then the amount of time that we expect to sign a contract. Right. So it went from, we expect to do this within 48 hours. And we broke everything down and we added the timelines to set that expectation so that, we would have a better way of, okay, if this lead doesn't work out, then at least we have someone else, and we're not waiting too long to find the right guest.
Hey landlords, are you ready to level up your rental game and simplify your midterm rental business? Well, get ready to meet your new best friend, KeyCheck. KeyCheck is your all-in-one solution for stress-free property management. With tenant-paid screenings, online rent payment processing, custom lease creation, and a suite of incredible landlord tools, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. No more chasing down checks or sifting through piles of applications. KeyCheck helps you organize and manage all things landlording in a simple and efficient way. Make landlord life a breeze with KeyCheck, the game changer for modern property owners. Visit keycheck.com to unlock the power of stress-free property management and take your rental business to new heights.
I think this is also interesting because you're showing that you don't have to have a co-host and turn over every part of the process. You can really make it how it works for you, right? You could even have a co-host or an assistant or whoever you want just help you out manage things like the cleanings or manage the turnovers or manage, whatever you want. It Furnished Finder is really meant so that you can use the tool however it works for you. And I think that's really, really important.
Definitely. I think this is actually a good time for a roundtable discussion, Katie. So you mentioned the time targets with, when someone says, "Hey, I'd like to move forward in the process," but maybe you have multiple people interested at the same time.
Yeah.
Let's each go through what our processes are to encourage other hosts that, maybe are, looking for a new way to do it or getting started in the midterm rental space. So, Jesus, what are those timings of, with your tenant screening, your lease? How do you communicate with your guests?
Yeah, so we have a list that basically says first thing that we do is a background check, and we use key check for that. And we set a time of, we expect for you to complete this within 24 hours. The platform is very easy. It's easy on my end to set up and generate, and it's easy for them to complete it and for us to get the information back so that we can verify. So that's really the first step. And once we're done with that, then we move over to creating the lease. And we also use KeyCheck for that. We set another 24 hours. For us, we also request if it's a traveling nurse, we'll request a copy of the contract. So that it gives us, an extra level of security that, this person is a traveling nurse, right? We can see what the housing stipend is. It's part of what we use to qualify whether we will move forward with this guest or not. So that's sort of the process. $1,000 deposit for the most part is what we take, and then if everything checks out within 48 hours, we should have everything signed, receive the deposit, and now that person is ready for that length of the term, and we'll update the Furnished Finder contract calendar.
So very similar. We also use the tenant screening on KeyCheck, and I look at it as it is that's them committing to that next step, right? It's like, hey, I when we're communicating, say, do you have any further questions, or would you like to move forward with the next steps in the process? And then that next step is the tenant screening, and I don't keep the information hidden along each step. Once they say, yes, I'm ready to move forward, then I send, here's all the next steps to complete the booking. And it starts with the tenant screening through KeyCheck. It's $39.99, basically $40, paid by the tenant. It's a soft pull, so it's not going to ding their credit card. Those are all really great things to communicate to your guests. And then, if someone inquires at the same time, the way I do it is, first, we honor the first person that inquired typically. So if someone already is started the tenant screening, then we're not going to, switch and jump into a different contract that just honestly looks better for their length of stay. We'll go ahead and stay consistent with that person, take them through the booking process, and then I'll communicate with any other guests that express interest. If for some reason, this guest falls through, I'll save your contact information and I'll follow up with you. But it's also nice to kind of use that as a tool of, Are you on the right price point? Is your marketing looking good? Because, if you've got way too many people inquiring at the same time, then maybe your price is too low. If you have gaps, then maybe your marketing or your pricing, you can always spot check your competition throughout the year on Furnished Finder. So I just like to kind of flip over the map about 30 to 60 days prior to a vacancy, kind of check my competition around me, make sure I'm still on the right page. And then what we do after the tenant screening is, in the lease, we put within to make sure that the move in fees are paid within 3 days of signing the lease. And if for some reason they're not, well, then that's a broken part of the lease, right? Because it didn't happen. So it hopefully would cover us to be able to then rent it to someone else if they never follow through with those move in fees. We haven't had that experience, so it's always been successful. And then we just have them pay the first month's rent on or prior to move in day. And once that is paid, with all the move-in fees in the first 3 days, and then the rent within within move-in day, then we provide the lockbox code and how to access the home, house guidelines, etc. Katie, what does your process look like?
Yeah, I try to get prospective tenants through the process as soon as possible. I let them know right from the beginning. And this is actually something I took from you, Kelly, is I like giving them an overview saying, okay, first things first, I want to know if you'd rather do a worry free waiver or a security deposit. And I describe that to them in a very, very basic sense. In my opinion, there's no reason to go into 100 levels of detail with a worry free waiver for them. It's as simple as, would you like to give me a refundable deposit? Or would you like to pay $59, $69, $70, depending on the property that I'm talking about, for up to the amount of coverage for damages, right? So typically, like with my studios, it's, would you like to give me a $500 deposit that's refundable if there's no damages? Or would you like me to add on a damage waiver for $59 a month? It's non-refundable, but then you're covered for up to $1,000 of accidental damage. And I tell them, I said, especially if you have pets, this is nice because then you don't have to worry about if there's any small things when you move out. So first I get the answer to that because that affects my workflow. And then I like telling them up front, we're going to do a tenant screening through Furnished Finder's sister company, KeyCheck. Then I'm going to send you an online lease agreement. And then from there, everything is online. So you can set up your payments online. It's super easy, but nothing is final until we get to the stage where I've gotten your lease signed. And for me, the cleaning fee, right? If they choose a deposit, it's cleaning fee and deposit is due immediately upon signing of the lease. If they're doing the worry free waiver, it's just the cleaning fee is due. And for me, that means they have some skin in the game.
Correct.
And then, so I tell them, I'm like, nothing is secure. Nothing is final until we get all of that done. So if you would like me to remove this from the marketplace and mark it as unavailable, we got to get to
Right.
those stages. So I don't even like them. I don't even like to give 24 hours because a lot of the times for my properties in my market, and this is very market dependent, my market tends to, for some reason, move very quickly. I think there's a lot of last minute contracts coming through the hospital. I don't know if the hospital doesn't like to use travelers unless they have to. From my perspective, they're always going to have to. It's a huge hospital. But a lot of other workers are coming through as well, and professionals and families. But I just tell them up front, you know, I'll let you know if I get any other interest. So you have kind of the first right of refusal, but nothing is final until we get the lease signed and those move-in fees, for lack of a better word, paid and complete. Because I don't, like you guys said, I don't want to get put in the position where I lose another tenant by waiting for that first one to come through, because things do happen. And I have had people get to the finish line and they say, oh, my contract just fell through, or this just fell
Correct.
through. It's like, no big deal. It totally happens, right? But we have to put together processes that work for ourselves, that work for our own properties in our own markets, because they're all a little bit different. And that's how you get to know it, guys, is by trying different stuff out.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, Katie, I just have one more question. Do you have any final questions before we wrap up with a fun one?
No, you can go for it.
Okay, back to that initial conversation. So your wife was hesitant at first about the space. How does she feel now about the furnished rental short-term, midterm space?
She loves it. I mean, you can see you can see the success. So this pilot that we tried for 1 year, it's working out, and we can see how we can continue to build off of this. So what we're looking into doing, starting in 2025, is how do we convert other long terms into this STR/MTR space. So yeah, it's good. I'm glad that we tried it, so that okay, this is the proof that this works. Now rinse and repeat, and continue
Yep.
to make efficiencies in the process.
Kelly, what would we have done if he said my wife hates this? This is
Well, we would have
terrible.
had to decide, did we want to keep it or cut it from the episode? If you've got a vote on that, put it in the comments. Do you want us to leave that stuff or cut it? No,
I think, but guys, I think it's great. It's try it. And he didn't say try it for a month or 2 months. They gave it a year, right? Give it some time, right? But in order to find out if this is going to work, you have to give it some time, and you got to go all in, right? It's kind of like you can't go to the gym once and expect to all of a sudden be like so swole that you're busting through your shirts. Like, you have to give it a little bit of consistency and time. You have to know there's going to be hiccups, but that's why we have resources like this podcast, right? Is so that we can help you to be successful.
yeah, for sure. I really like how Will Dotson said it on episode 111 of the Landlord Diaries. He said, MTR, midterm rentals, are needs. Short term rentals are wants. So you already answered your own question, Jesus. The way that you can get started is in when you know that next long term rental is coming available. Start marketing it 60 days ahead of time, just like you do as a long term rental. Add it on Furnished Finder for right now, it's one low annual cost, right? So it's like with all you need is one renter to say yes, and you have by far exceeded that annual cost of marketing the property on Furnished Finder, and we have no booking fees. So other sites where you can sign up and list your property for free, well, they're taking that 10 to 15% or so on
Correct.
every booking, where we're not taking any of that. It's you run your business your own way. So pay that low annual cost, and you can just get in there and start marketing with the professional unfurnished photos. And if you get someone that says yes, well, now there's your ticket to convert it from long term to short term. And I love what Katie says, because it's needs, not wants. You don't have to go straight to like high end furnishings. You could start with IKEA. You could start with, being thrifty at marketplace, or really searching for something that fits your budget. And then as you continue and you improve in the space, well, then slowly upgrade those items, switch out the dining room table, switch out the couch, things like that. Definitely always start with a comfortable bed. That's a must.
Yes.
But it
Yes.
doesn't have to be an expensive mattress. There are plenty comfortable mattresses out there. And Sarah Weaver's got one on her episode. I think it's episode 16. That is like the Zynus. Everyone likes the Zynus, like 12, like the 12-inch plush mattress. And it's like $300. It's not that expensive.
I got to look
So
at that. I have to look into that one.
yeah, exactly. Dave and I have bought one. We're like, you know what? Let's try this out. Yeah, they're very comfortable. They're nice. Do make sure and measure your bed size before you order the mattress. We messed up there once. They told us it was a king. We ordered the mattress. It was not a king. It was a queen. That was a
Oh
bit of
gosh.
a challenge. So definitely measure your bed first and make sure it's the right fit. But Jesus, if anyone wants to connect with you further, they can always reach out to you through your Furnish Finder listing. Is there any other way that you'd like them to connect, or are you active on social media anywhere?
Instagram, that's the page that I'm usually there. I'm putting tips and tricks, just information that I've gathered. I usually share it there, at Jesus J661. I'm looking for a prettier name, but that's what I have right now, so that's what I'm going with.
Yep, doesn't have to be pretty. Just has to
Correct.
be approachable, right? Just got to be able to find it. That one's pretty easy to find.
Correct.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Uh, one thing Jesus said is he didn't even know about our podcast until a couple months ago when it came out in one of our Furnished Finder emails. So if this content is super helpful to you, think of business colleagues or friends or family members that might benefit from the content as well. And, the idea of a passive income opportunity to combine with their W-2. So think of someone that you might want to share this show with. And we appreciate your 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your likes on YouTube, your follows. And we'll see you next week. We bring you brand new episodes from Furnished Finder hosts all around the country every week, and we are starting to mix in subject matter expert conversations as well. So stay tuned for all things midterm rentals. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.